Good morning. 473, if you would, please all stand. We'll open the service with a song of peace and joy. 473. All together in the first. Ready? Walking in sunlight all of my journey, over the mountains, through the deep vale. Jesus has said, I'll never forsake thee, promise divine that never can fail. Heavenly sunlight, flooding my soul with glory divine. Hallelujah, I am rejoicing, singing his praises, Jesus is mine. Shadows around me, never conceal. He is the light, in him is no darkness. Ever I'm walking close to his side. Heavenly sunlight, so with glory divine. Hallelujah, I am rejoicing, singing his praises, Jesus is mine. In the bright sunlight, ever rejoicing, singing his praises, gladly I'm walking in sunlight, sunlight of love. Heavenly sunlight, so with glory divine. Hallelujah, I am rejoicing, singing his praises, Jesus is mine. Amen. Thank you for that singing. It's good. Brother Bill, we ask God's blessing, please, on this lesson to come. Yeah. Amen. Thank you, Will. You all may be seated. Thank you again for being here. And open up the book of Proverbs. What chapter are we in? 30. Chapter 30. Still in chapter 30. And who knows what lesson number this is? No, way off. This is lesson number 96. We had 96 lessons so far in the book of Proverbs. Brother Fernando thought it was only like 22, but no, I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. He had in there. All right, chapter 30. And first of all, hop over the Proverbs chapter 8 for a minute, if you would. Chapter 8 first. And I want to read a portion of Scripture here. And this is something that Agur, in chapter 9, something that he is talking about in chapter 30. This is what he's really talking about. Okay, verse 22 in chapter 8. The Lord possessed me in the beginning of his way, before his works of old, period. Okay? I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was. Where there were no depths, I was brought forth. When there was no foundation abounding with water, before the mountains were settled, before the hills was I brought forth. While as yet he had not made the earth, nor the fields, nor the highest part of the dust of the world. When he prepares the heaven, I was there. When he set a compass upon the face of the depth, when he established the clouds above, when he strengthened the fountains of the deep, when he gave to the sea his decree that the water should not pass his commandment, when he appointed the foundations of the earth. I like that verse 29, when he gave to the sea his decree that the water should not pass his commandment. I love that. I love when like going to the beach. Like I went to Nantasket a couple of days ago, and it's funny how the tide was low, but you still see it's what they're saying here is, and isn't it something that every time you go to the beach, the waters stop. They never go beyond, of course, a storm, but the waters never. All the oceans, all the rivers, they're all the same. They stop at God's command. I want you to stop there. You stop there. That's God's commandment. That's how God made it to be that. It's awesome how they obey God, his commandment. In verse 30, then I was by him as one brought up with him, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing always before him, rejoicing in the habitable part of his earth, and my delights were with the sons of men. Now therefore hearken unto me, O ye children, be blessed, are they that kept my ways. Hear instruction and be wise, and refuse it not. Blessed is the man that heareth me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at the post of my doors. For whoso findeth me findeth life, and shall obtain favor of the Lord. But he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death. Isn't that something? All they that hate me love death. Whoa, that is powerful. But isn't that funny? All these verses are positive except that last one. Okay? So anyway, now go to chapter 30, our text here. And I was wondering when I started this lesson, I wonder how many verses I'm going to get to this time. I only got the 2 verses, really. Okay? There's a lot in here. Chapter 30, and look at verse 19. Yeah, I know I told you 17, but we did that last week. So, but actually it's verse 18. We'll start at verse 18, okay? Verse 18. Okay. There be 3 things. Let me just say something. I found these last 3 or 4 lessons, all the lessons in chapter 30, awesome. I mean, just the way it's like I said, it's different from all the other Proverbs. It's something awesome. You get so much out of it. Verse 18. There be 3 things which are too wonderful for me, yea, 4 which I know not. The way of an eagle in the air, the way of a serpent upon a rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea, and the way of a man with a maid. Now look at verse 20. Such is the way of an adulterous woman, she eateth, she wipeth her mouth, and saith, I have done no wickedness. That's how far I got. I'll give you all a chance to comment on this, but let me just go on. Again, there are 3 things which are too wonderful for me, yea, 4 which I know not. Or what he's saying, there's 4 things which I really don't understand. And so we see here good wisdom. We see God's wisdom. And we see evil. We see foolishness. Okay? Verse 19, the way of an eagle is in the air, the way of a serpent upon the rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea. And he's asking this question, how can it be controlled by just a small little rudder? Okay, I'm going to get back to this. But think of a massive ship. Huge, massive ships. With a small little rudder. And James talks about that too. Just like a little tongue. Just like a little tongue controls our whole body. I was telling the officer I had here last week, we were talking about it in the car. And we're talking about the tongue, about filthy speaking. Is it wrong to say this? Certain words. Is it wrong to say this? Is it wrong to say that? And some things, I said, it depends how you use it, But God says, keep all filthy communication out of your mouth. Let it not proceed out of your mouth. All filthy communication. So we're talking about that. And I'm saying, Brian, I says, just a little tongue like that ship. Just a little tongue. What's it do when you get mad or curse? It controls your whole body. You know, just like the ship with a little rudder. It's awesome. Anyway, let's go. So anyway, and then it says there, the way of the eagle, the serpent, the ship, in the way of a man with a maid. Okay? With a maid. That was another interesting one. But Agur here, the prophet, okay, we're in chapter 30 of Proverbs, okay, chapter 30 in the book of Proverbs. And Agur here, the prophet, and the writer of these verses here, is giving us something really to think about. That's why we see all these different things, the eagle, the serpent. Agur wants us to think about these things, but not just think about this thing, but he's telling us things that are too awesome. They're so awesome. They're amazing. He's saying these things are incredible for our complete understanding. Now, we saw this from the very first chapter, okay? We saw this from the very first few verses of chapter 30 with Agur. But when we look at these things, we should ourselves, when we look at God's creation and certain things in his creation, we should be really amazed. How in the world does this happen? How can this be, be amazed? And it should really humble us. It should humble us. So these four things, really, you think about it, have a lot in common. And these things humble our mind and to admit the great need for wisdom. Lord, I want to know, but how do you do these things, Lord, But before we get to verse 19, remember what Agur showed us in, again, Proverbs Proverbs verses 2 and 4. Look at verses 2 and 4 again. Chapter 3, verse 2 and 4. He says, surely I am more brutish. Now that brutish means what? Who can tell me, what does brutish mean? Yeah, in the Hebrew it means, he's saying stupid. But he's saying, go ahead, good. Okay, yeah, you can put that. But he didn't consider himself wise. He's looking at God, at God's awesomeness, okay? So let me just go on. And so he introduces creation, divine power, and human ignorance. God in his great wisdom created these things. We know that, okay? We can see that in verses 2 and 4. In verses 2 and 4 again, let me read 2 and 4 again. Surely I am more brutish than any man, and have not the understanding of a man. I neither learned wisdom, nor have the knowledge of the holy, who hath ascended up into heaven, or descended, who hath gathered the wind in his fists, who hath bound the waters in a garment, who hath established all the ends of the earth. What is his name? What is his son's name, if thou canst tell it? Remember that? You remember we talked about that last night? Now, in verse 8, chapter 8, one more time, go back to chapter 8 again. We had this lesson in verse 22 again, right? The Lord possessed me in the beginning of his way, before his works of old. I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was. When there was no depth, I was brought forth. Who's he talking about? You can say Jesus, but what is all the book of Proverbs about? Wisdom. Wisdom was there from the very beginning. 1 Corinthians does talk about Jesus Christ is our wisdom, right? But it's talking about wisdom was there from the very, very beginning of time, before Genesis 1:1. And that's when I get into John the first book of John, when I get into the book of John, which is going to be after chapter 31 of Proverbs, you're going to see all this. It's amazing. It's amazing. Okay, so we see that in verse 2. So we see God's great wisdom, how he created all things. And man cannot fully explain them. Man cannot duplicate them. Okay, right. He cannot duplicate a lot of this. We're going to see all this. And so like Agur, we should humbly admire them. Agur's wish, or his goal, is for us to give God praise and to glorify God for his awesome creation, his awesome wisdom that he has, to glorify him in his creation and his lesson to us. These are lessons to us to apply. Yeah, open our mind. We've been in the book of Proverbs. Again, this is our 96th lesson in the book of Proverbs. How much have we learned? Of all those verses, one by one, every single verse so far we studied, again, I'll say, how many did we apply? Knowledge is good, but without application, it's useless, right? Okay, so, and what does God want us to learn? So verse 19, first of all, what does the eagle, in verse 19, what does the serpent, what does the ship, what does the man, what do all these have in common? Keep in mind, all four things are visible for a while, then they're hidden. They're visible, then they're gone. Okay? All four things progress, they advance, even the man and the woman. Yeah, they are. Without leaving a trace. You see them, they're gone. All right? They leave nothing behind. All four things have a mysterious ways or means of progress or motivation, what motivates or inspires them to do what they do. All four things move in the area of something else, and they all go into their different environments. Now let's think about them. Actually thinking about it, three things are the wonders of nature, all right? The fourth wonderful thing is the way of man with a maid. Now, I got to say, first of all, many commentaries will say that the maid in chapter 19 is the same woman that's in chapter 20, in verse 20. Okay? The maid in verse 19 is the same maid or woman in verse 20. I don't believe so. And I'll explain why as we go along. When you watch, let's take them one at a time. When you watch the eagle, now I'm going to take one at a time. I'll let you have a comment on this, okay? You might know a lot more. When you watch the eagle, it should amaze you when you study. When you study anything of God's creation, it should amaze you. I mean, just like the ants. Let me take, for instance, the ants, okay? Just came to my mind. God says, now when I was a kid, I told you before, when I was a kid, I used to watch the ants. I mean, I used to watch them. I made my own. I took a fish tank and I put dirt in it. Remember I told you that? And I put black ants and red ants. Put it right in half. And I put a little bridge. This is seriously, when I was a kid. And I saw the black ants go into the red ants, and the red ants all would attack that black ant. And even on the bridge, they come together and they'd fight. I watched ants. It was awesome. And you see trails in my fish tank. You see the trails against the glass, how they make their own little, trails, and you see the eggs laid and all that. It's just amazing. You learn. But God says, watch the ants. That's wisdom. Watch the ants, how smart they are. They're wise. And what do? All summer long, they prepare for the winter, right? And they hide, and they're all set with food and all these. But watch them. God says, I used to kill them when I was a kid. I used to put lighter fluid around the ants, really, and I used to burn them. Now I don't want to step on them. God says, watch them. You're going to learn a lot from the ants. But this is kind of what we see here. So when you watch the eagle, it should amaze you, okay? When you see its power, when you see its height, when you see it in its grace, it's awesome. But think or picture in your mind the eagle floating, literally floating, and gliding on what they call thermal updrafts or a current updrafts, okay? The eagle can take flight, and it can fly a circle gracefully with hardly a movement, right? With hardly a movement of its 5 foot 11 inches all the way up to 7 foot 2 inches, their wingspans. That's why, that's a lot. I've seen them. When they span out their wings. It can go several miles without even flapping its wings because of the current of the air. It just floats. I mean, that's amazing. Not even one, it just float. Yeah, yeah. And what it does when they open their wings, it also cools them off because they literally pant like a dog. So what keeps them with the wings open, the air cools them. That's why they keep it. So they're awesome. But it can go as fast as 60 to 100 miles an hour when it goes to dive towards the earth to catch prey in the air, okay, or to go on land or in the water to catch fish, 60 to 100 miles an hour. They're awesome. This is what Agur is talking about. That's why I took it to chapter 8, all right, Genesis chapter 1. See the awesomeness of God, what he can do with the wisdom he has, okay? And before the mating process, before they get to know, the eagles get to know each other, this courtship includes beautiful aerial displays real high in the sky, in which they grab each other's feet. Their wings are spread, and they grab each other's feet. Their feet are spread, the eagle against the other eagle, and plunge or dive towards the earth together, cartwheeling, spinning, flipping around with their wings and legs outstretched. And then all of a sudden you see them, and you don't. Okay? You watch and see them, and then they're gone. They don't leave any trace behind. They're gone. And so, Agur's saying, who can understand the wisdom of God? They leave no track behind, but just think about God's wise design. That's just the eagle. Now, who wants to comment again on the eagle? Anybody want to say anything about the eagle before I go on to the next one? It is an amazing bird, and they're beautiful birds. There's different kinds. Exactly. Right. Yeah. Yeah. How to hunt. You can talk so much about that. And yeah. Right. Oh, of course he does. But think of the eyesight. I mean, they'll be way up in the heavens in the clouds, and they can look down, they can see a mouse. Eyesight is fantastic. Let's go to the serpent. The serpent also is a very interesting thing when you look at the serpent. I mean, really watch them. I did. Snakes don't really bother me at all, but I know just a simple garter snake. I know some, remember David Henn? The big, almost 6 feet, 7 feet, almost 7 feet. He hates snakes, even little snakes. I've seen them. But watch them, they're amazing. It has no arms. It's got no legs, no feet. And it's awesome how they slither and they twist through the grass or through rocky places, even in the sand, wherever. They just slither. And even on a smooth rock, it's amazing how even on a smooth rock, they lay on these big smooth rocks, and they have no leverage. They can't grab, okay? They have no leverage, but it can move fast forward and upward on that slippery surface without hands or feet. It's just, they're amazing. And it moves so efficiently, so quickly, and they leave no tracks behind. And they can hide almost anywhere. But what an awesome design it is. Even the scales, even when they lay on these rocks and it's really, really hot and roasting hot and the rocks are hot. Their scales keep them cool. They're amazing. Anybody want to comment on the snake? I mean, there's a lot we can say about the snake, but just a natural-looking snake. Yeah. Even some snakes, big snakes could eat a squirrel, rats. They can swallow a lot. There's a lot more we can say about the serpent. Oh, forget it. Yeah. Yeah, they actually swing and they can curl and they can jump, and they have some either with wings. If there's so much about snakes. Yeah. And of course, we can go about Satan, that little slithering snake, right? We can do a lot about him. But anyway, let's look at the ship. Let's look at the ship. Think about the ship. Even though a ship looks so huge to us, battleships, aircraft carriers, as big as they are, it's so small in the midst of the sea. Tiny in the midst of the sea. Yet it conquers the sea by using it as a road for travel, for trade, for war, for enjoyment, all kinds of things, a ship. But they were an amazing thing to watch. Even as a kid, going to Martha's Vineyard, I was just a little kid. We used to go on the ferries, the big ships, the big ones, and I love ships. One thing amazes me is ships and trains. I love them, but ships amaze me. And even a sailing vessel has no propeller, no oars or other visible means of thrust. Yet it just goes along easily in the water with the sail. It just easily goes along. Its massive size is also directed or guided by a very small wheel or rudder. It doesn't leave any path. After a while, you see it going, but after a while, it just leaves no path to follow. It leaves no trace behind. That's another thing about the ships. And it can handle most, if not all, storms without capsizing. And think of the many tons made of metal, the tons and tons and tons, thousands of tons of metal, and it doesn't sink. Yeah, it just it's amazing. Yet it floats smoothly. They're awesome. But who can grasp the ships? Just like a kid, it amazed me, and they still amaze me. Wise design. God gave man wisdom, a lot of wisdom to do these things. Anybody want to mention anything about ships as far as the awesomeness of ships? Eric?
Just a big misnomer that the evolutionists and humanists have in this world. They say that Noah's Ark was a complete infallibility. It could never have happened, but yet all modern tankers are designed on the same ratio proportions as Noah's Ark is given out.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Good. Awesome. Good. Awesome. How big was that, brother? You remember? 2.5 baseball fields, was it, or something like that?
Yeah, you can hold up, well, it was 150 or 200 railroad cars.
Yeah.
Could fit inside of the dock itself.
Right.
But the thing back then, people think of species instead of kinds. You only needed 2 dogs. You didn't need every single breed of dog. Those 2 dogs could breed every dog.
Exactly.
So it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Where it was built, it could take the seeds.
Oh, yeah.
That ship had to move. It was not rigid, but it was able to move without moving back.
Yeah. And how many, just while we're on this subject, how awesome it was, what did they do to the ship to keep from the water getting in? Pitched it within, without. What kind of wood was it made of? Gopher wood. How many floors did it have? 3 floors. Okay, yeah. Awesome, wasn't it? That's God, His wisdom. He told Noah what to do, how to make it. Step by step. God's wisdom is awesome. Okay, so we can see those 3 things. Now here's what I said in the beginning. I don't believe God says, look at these four things. They're amazing. And then we go to this next one here, talk about the maid. And many believe that the maid is the same, in verse 19, is the same one, same woman, as in verse 20, the adulterous woman. I don't believe it's the same woman. After seeing the first three, this is glorifying God. These are awesome things. You know what I'm saying? It's how these things progress. And I think it's just the same as a man and a woman. Here, let me go on here. In verse 19, the maid, a girl, a young unmarried woman. In the Hebrew, it's a virgin. It's a girl or a woman servant, but it's a virgin, looking in the Hebrew. Again, some believe the maid is the adulteress, but I don't believe it. I believe it's two separate women. The simplest explanation of this expression refers to the courtship, which is from meeting each other, a relationship, meeting each other, the man and the maid, dating, let's say for instance, okay, knowing each other. And then the old term comes, like when I first met my wife, okay, I asked my cousin, she's walking up, who's that girl? And that's your wife, Anita. I mean, yeah, your wife, Anita. That's Anita. She lives down in such and such a street. And so I get to know Anita. I called her. I start to get to know her. We started meeting each other, okay? And we started dating. We started going steady. That's the old term, going steady. And then we started to really love each other. And our love grew for each other. We started to get to know each other. And then we got engaged. And then we got married. Okay? This is God's design. It is so common to everybody. You meet somebody, oh, I like her. You start talking, you get in a relationship together, and that's just, I believe, God's design. Right? Okay? And so another thing is with those three others, the eagle, the serpent, the ship, okay, as they go on, who can grasp this design of God's design? It's awesome. And if you think about it, a way of a man with a maid or a virgin, the way with a man with a maid, it's a wonderful thing. It's not evil, it's not bad. A virgin girl, a maid, is protected well for 12 to 18 years, okay? Her life is content. Now think of this, a young girl, she's growing up, okay? And her life is content by being someone who does the everyday normal things, doing chores, okay? Assignments, school, hobbies, having a hobby, having a job, hanging around with her friends, having family time. So all these everyday things, she's just simply happily content with her life, what she's doing. Has a good time, friends, might go to college, all these things, okay? With these things that she's doing, she really doesn't think about love. She doesn't really think about sex, all right, at this time. It doesn't bother her. It doesn't really come to her mind. But then think about a big change in her life when a man comes along and he introduces himself as he's a very nice person, he's very charming, he's good looking, and he charms her. Charms her with words on how he speaks. He's respectful, he's polite, the way he looks is nice, is decent, okay? And he's a wise person. He lights a fiery response never seen before in her. They get to know each other. Soon they embrace. They hug, okay, whatever. And she is emotionally obsessed with him. This is all something new to her. So what happens? And she always wants to be with him now. She got a relationship with him. I like you, he likes me. She tells her friends, she tells her family, I met this guy, I want you to meet him. She's happy. And what happens is she leaves all that she did behind. All these things she used to do, she leaves it behind to follow him, to go his way. And this is how it happens. I had my life. I had things I did all the time. She had her things she did all the time. And then until we met each other, our life completely changed. You see what I'm saying? I believe God put us together, 100%. It's a natural thing. It's a wonderful thing. And Agar is giving praise to God for the glories of creation, especially for sexual love that comes after marriage, okay? And what happens, you don't leave any bad impression behind, if you know what I'm talking about. You're doing it according to God's will, okay? To me, it's a wonderful thing. So looking at these four things, we see the glory of God's creation. We see, again, the wisdom of God. And Agar is giving praise to God for the wonderful things in life and the wisdom he gives to man and so on. And this is the reason why I don't believe, as some do again, that the fourth thing, the way of a man with a maid, relates to verse 20. Why always think of the worst thing? Okay? The virgin, to me, stands in contrast to the adulteress who sees nothing wrong with demeaning her sexuality with another sexual partner to nothing more than eating a meal in verse 20. Look at verse 20. I'm going to read verse 19 first. Verse 19. The way of an eagle in the air, the way of a serpent upon the rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea, and the way of a man with a maid. Okay, they're awesome things. They're good things. God's awesome, the way God put these things, how they work out together. And then verse 20, such is the word way again, the fifth time way. Such is the way of an adulterous woman. She eateth, she wipeth her mouth, and saith, I have done no wickedness. All right, let me go on. So she's called an adulterous woman, unnatural, right? She is totally at ease in her sin. She eats, she wipes her mouth, and since she's characterized by her adultery, her eating here is a tasteful reference to her sin of adultery. She satisfies her hunger for adultery, then casually wipes her mouth and considers herself blameless. I have done no wickedness. Wiping her mouth after eating means that she treats sexual relations the same way she does eating. She's just finished up and goes home without a care and definitely without a sense of guilt. I have done no wickedness. So I separate this maid, which means virgin, okay, who meets a guy, they have a good life together, good relationship, they get going steady, they get married, and so on. It's a great thing, it's a wonderful thing. This adulterous woman we've seen many times in the book of Proverbs. So let me ask you what you think on verse 18 and 19. Anybody have any comments on this adulterous woman on verse 20? Go ahead, Eric.
Well, she's just like the kids today. Because I'm sorry, but when you watch some of these things that they post online and
No wisdom. God calls them fools. They have no shame. As it says, I have done no wickedness, she says. She's an adulteress. And just like you said, thank you for that. They live in sin. It's a way of life today, isn't it? Everything is, they call evil good. That's what it is today. We heard it many times. Today you call evil good. Everything's okay. And so what are they saying? No God. The fool has said in his heart, no God. And that's what it is today. And that's why we're living in the last days. It's wicked. Go ahead.
So this adulterous woman is not a prostitute? It's just
Oh, she's a prostitute, yes.
oh, I was gonna say, because the Bible uses the word prostitute, doesn't it? In certain- So,
It uses, let's see, harlot. Thank you. That's the one I'm trying to get. Harlot. It uses harlot. And if you go to the Greek or to the Hebrew, it'll say prostitute, yes. Okay? But yeah, it's a wicked world. Very seldom do you see marriage today. I mean, when I see it, I say, praise Lord, you know. I mean, it still goes. But more percentage is just living together. No shame, no wickedness. And that, again, that's why we're living in the last days. Anybody want to comment on these last few, on these four things? I'm just curious. How many agree that this woman in verse 19 is just a regular virgin who met a guy? Raise your hand. I'm just curious. Okay. How many think the maid in verse 19 is the same woman in verse 20? Raise your hand. I'm just curious. Okay? All right. Okay. All right. It just makes common sense to me. Right? Verse 19, hey, these things are great. God, this is how God designed things and so on. It's wonderful. And Agur from chapter 1 all the way through is just praising God. I'm dumb. He's saying, I'm useless. I'm stupid. I need wisdom. But when I look at God, he's so awesome. He's great. Right? We serve a wonderful God. That's how it is in verse 19 all the way back. And then we come to verse 20, chapter 20. We see that in chapter 8 too. Okay. Here's what we're going to do next week. We're going to start from verse 21. Let's read on. Verse 21. For these three things the earth is disquieted. That means the earth is distressed, or troubled, okay? The earth is disquieted. And for four which it cannot bear. For a servant, now here we go. For a servant when he reigneth, and a fool when he is filled with meat. For the odious woman, that word odious is a disgusting, detestable woman. An odious woman which, when she is married, and an handmaid that is heir to her mistress. That's one thing. Then there are four things which are little upon the earth. Oh, here it is, the end. But they are exceeding wise. What's the book of Proverbs all about from all the way, chapter 1 all the way through? Wisdom, right? The ants are a people not strong, yet they prepare their meat in the summer. The conies, and then verse 27, the locust, 28, the spider, 30, lion, 31, greyhound, and then the goat. Awesome things about all these. We can learn so much from these. I love this, one of my favorite chapters. So let's go on for that for next week. And again, thank you for your faithfulness. Before we close, we got a couple minutes. Anybody want to comment again on what we talked about this morning? Okay, go ahead.
You asked if we thought the maid and in verse 20, the adulterous woman were the same person.
No, I say they're not the same person.
If it was though, wouldn't God have said the maid, well, like he's using different words. It's not, like clearly the maid is one woman and the adulterous woman is another woman. That's how I look at it. Like it's two different women. Don't you agree?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that it is two different women.
But sometimes, obviously you asked a question, maybe people didn't catch it.
Oh, yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know,
Yeah, there's a lot of commentaries who believe that this maid is the same adulteress, or that there's one woman. But I don't believe that, only because of what is said about the awesomeness of God in verse 19. All these four things, that they're awesome things. It's God's way of doing this. You know what I'm saying? And again, the word maid, if you look in the Hebrew, okay, which is the word study, it says virgin. She's a virgin, okay? And it goes good with these other four things. But then verse 20 is a totally different. That's what I'm saying. They're different ladies. Is that,
I just want, like, well, doesn't the Bible describe certain people, like, they use, like, it's just two different people here.
yeah.
I don't even know how that person that would even confuse this for
Well,
a prostitute
yeah.
or adulterous woman.
That's what I say.
Doesn't say it.
That's what I say, brother. Yeah, that's what I say. But what they're saying is this man meets a maid, and then when a man meets a girl, like Brother Eric was saying, like today, sometimes this version that they get, they live in sin and adultery. You know what I'm saying? It can happen. But looking at what the context here, again, verse 19, it's the God's amazing creation. It's awesome. Okay? Those four things together, that one verse. Then we come to, okay, well, this woman here, okay? But yes, I was amazed too. Very good commentaries, very good people, men with a lot of wisdom. I couldn't believe that, personally myself, I couldn't believe that they thought that this was the same woman. Why? Why do you say that? Why did you have to think evil all the time? Why can't you, it's just how they are, how they read it, I guess. Go ahead, Jonathan, I know you had a question there.
I don't agree. The word such is means to relate, but they're similar, they're same class, don't you think? Why does it say such is the way? I think that.
Well, okay, so what are you saying here? That it's the same woman?
Well, it almost sounds like, or similar, in the way that such is the way they call this one, but they relate.
Yeah. See, again, it's how you read it to what? Let me read it. Let me read it. The way of an eagle in the air. Okay, wait, verse 18. There be three things which are too wonderful for me, yea, four which I know not. The way of an eagle in the air, the way of a serpent upon a rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea, the way of the man with a maid. Such is the way of an adulterous woman. She eateth, she wipeth her mouth, and she's... Okay? The best thing you do is what the Bible says, study to show yourself approved unto God, rightly dividing the word of truth. Study. I've studied this out, okay? I believe I'm right, okay? And I know I'm repeating myself, but all I see is from chapter 1 and chapter 8 and verses 2 and 4 in chapter 30 here. He's talking about the greatness of God, how God creates. His wisdom is awesome. And in verse 19, his creation with an eagle is awesome. His creation with the serpent and the way the ships are built in the sea and the way with the man and the maid are so wonderful things that God did. It's a natural thing. Who can know the wisdom of God? Me. See what I'm saying? Then verse 20 comes in. That's how I see it, okay? So,
They fall in love.
yeah,
This young lady, her name is a young lady,
yeah, and it's a virgin.
and this man comes along and sees that she's beautiful. They fall in love.
Yes,
She falls in love with him, he falls in love with her.
yeah, and that is,
Life is a married couple.
yeah, and if I can say it this way, this is like Adam and Eve, God created woman to be with man. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, but you see all these things, and it's just, it's the way God created it. It's the way it happens, okay? He gave us that heart to love and see, and
And the adulterous woman ate and wipes them out. She doesn't care.
right,
There's no caring about being a man.
right,
Don't you get it?
yeah, exactly.
It's like they think that they do
Right. Right. So in my eyes, how can you separate verse 19, all these four things which are wonderful? How can you separate that and say all of a sudden, this woman is an adulteress in 20? I can't see that. Okay? Anyway, I think it was a good lesson. And it's funny how we do have different opinions, which is fine, okay. We have different opinions on things. But I feel good before God that what I have, and I thank God for that, because I've been through it with my wife, okay? All right. Any more questions on this before we go? So please, read. Let's go on next week, and let's have some more people involved. And I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Because what's that scripture I use all the time? Iron sharpeneth iron. I'll learn from you just as much as you learn from me, okay? Okay, let's have a word of prayer. Thank you again for your faithfulness. And just read on chapter 30. Okay, let's have a word of prayer. I'm going to ask Eric, would you please ask God's blessing on the service to come?